Vrexolon woke before sunrise on his second week at Fort Dominion. The sounds outside his window told him the humans were already active. They were always active. He was beginning to wonder if they ever truly rested. Lisa met him at the main gate, with her usual smile and a cup of dark liquid she called coffee. She had offered him some on his first day. The taste had nearly killed him. Now he politely refused whenever she asked. "Today is special," Lisa said as they walked toward a row of transport vehicles. "You're going to see a survival training exercise." Vrexolon had read about this in the training schedules. Cadets were taken to remote locations and left alone for several days. He assumed they were given supplies and shelter. He assumed wrong. The transport flew for 2 hours over mountains and forests. When it finally landed, Vrexolon stepped out into a wilderness unlike anything on his homeworld. Trees taller than Therian buildings stretched toward the sky. The air smelled of dirt and growing things. In the distance, he could hear water moving over rocks. Instructor Kevin Blake stood at the edge of a clearing. He was a thin man with gray hair and eyes that seemed to look through people rather than at them. 20 cadets stood before him in 2 neat rows. They wore simple clothing and carried nothing but small knives at their belts. "Listen up," Kevin said. His voice was soft but clear. "This is the Cascade Mountain Range. For the next 5 days, this is your home. Your mission is simple. Survive. Reach the extraction point marked on the maps in your heads. Work together or work alone. I don't care. Just don't die. The paperwork is annoying." A few cadets laughed nervously. "Questions?" Kevin asked. A cadet named Danny Wright raised his hand. He was tall and thin, with bright red hair. "Sir, what resources are available to us?" Kevin gestured at the forest around them. "Everything you see. Water in the streams, food in the plants and animals, shelter in the trees and rocks. Your ancestors survived without grocery stores. Figure it out." "What if we get injured?" asked another cadet, a woman named Maria Santos, with dark skin and sharp eyes. "Don't," Kevin replied. "But if you do, there are emergency beacons in your knives. Press the button, and a medical team will extract you. But if you use it, you fail the exercise. Clear?" The cadets nodded. "Then go. Clock starts now." The cadets scattered into the forest. Vrexolon watched them disappear into the green shadows with remarkable speed. Within moments, he could no longer see or hear any of them. "We will observe from a distance," Kevin explained. He pulled out a device that showed the location of each cadet as a small dot on a map. "We track their movements, but don't interfere unless there's a real emergency." Vrexolon spent the next 3 days watching humans do impossible things. He watched Danny Wright build a shelter from fallen branches and large leaves. The structure was crude, but kept out the rain that fell on the second night. He watched Danny make a fishing line from plant fibers and catch 3 fish from a cold stream. He watched Danny start a fire using only his knife, a rock, and dry grass. "How does he know these things?" Vrexolon asked. Kevin sipped his coffee. "Basic training covers wilderness survival. But a lot of these kids grew up camping and hunting. They've been doing this since they were children." "For entertainment?" "For fun," Kevin confirmed. "Humans like being in nature. We find it relaxing." Vrexolon stared at the instructor. Therians considered nature to be dangerous and uncomfortable. They had built their cities specifically to escape from it. The idea of returning to wilderness for pleasure was deeply confusing. On the 3rd day, Vrexolon observed something that would stay with him forever. Maria Santos had found a group of 3 other cadets. Together they had built a camp near a small river. They had food, water, and shelter. Everything seemed to be going well. Then Maria stepped on a loose rock and twisted her ankle. Vrexolon watched through the observation drone as Maria fell to the ground. Her face twisted in pain. Her ankle was already beginning to swell. One of her teammates, a large cadet named Victor Cruz rushed to her side. "How bad?" Victor asked. Maria tested her weight on the ankle and winced. "I can't walk on it. Not well, anyway." The other two cadets gathered around. They discussed the situation in quick, serious voices. The extraction point was still 2 days away. The rules said they could call for help, but that would mean failure. Vrexolin expected them to leave her. On Theria, injured soldiers were often abandoned to ensure mission success. It was logical. It was efficient. Victor looked at the others. "We carry her." "That's crazy," said one cadet, a woman named Beth Palmer. 2 more days through rough terrain, we'll all fail." "Then we fail together," Victor said. He turned to Maria. "You'd do the same for us." Maria didn't argue. She knew he was right. For the next 2 days, Vrexolin watched 4 humans carry their injured teammate through mountains, across rivers, and over rocky ground. They took turns supporting Maria between them. When the path was too narrow, Victor carried her on his back. They moved slowly. They were exhausted, but they kept going. They reached the extraction point, with 3 hours to spare. His face showed no expression as he looked at the exhausted, dirty, triumphant cadets. "You're late," he said. "We made it," Victor replied. He was breathing hard, but standing tall. Kevin looked at Maria's swollen ankle, then at the faces of her teammates. Something that might have been pride flickered in his eyes. "Yes," he said, "you did." That night, Vrexolon wrote his second major report. Human survival training is designed to push cadets beyond their physical and mental limits, he wrote. They are placed in genuinely dangerous situations with minimal resources. Failure is possible. Death is possible. They do this intentionally. More concerning is the behavior I observed when a cadet was injured. Standard military logic suggests abandoning injured personnel to ensure mission success. Humans reject this logic. They carried their wounded teammate for 2 days through difficult terrain rather than leave her behind. This slowed them significantly and nearly caused them to fail. When I asked why they made this choice, one cadet responded with confusion. He said, "We don't leave people behind. Ever. That's not who we are." This attitude appears universal among human military personnel. They value group loyalty above individual success. They would rather fail together than succeed alone. I do not fully understand this philosophy, but I am beginning to fear it. A force that will never abandon its members is a force that cannot be broken through conventional tactics. They will fight for each other with a intensity that pure self-interest cannot match. Recommendation: do not underestimate human military capability. Their apparent illogic is actually their greatest strength. End report. Vrexolon sent the message and looked out his window at the dark desert night. Somewhere out there, human cadets were learning to survive impossible conditions. They were learning to never give up. They were learning to never leave anyone behind. He wondered what other surprises this strange species had in store for him. Vrexolon had seen humans hurt each other in training. He had seen them survive in the wilderness with nothing but knives and determination. He thought he understood what made them dangerous. He was wrong. On the morning of his 3rd week, Lisa took him to a building he had not yet visited. It was smaller than the others and had no windows. The walls were thick concrete. The door required 3 different codes to open. "This is the Psychological Operations Training Center," Lisa explained as they walked through the door. "We call it PsyOps for short." The inside of the building looked like a normal classroom. Desks faced a large screen at the front. About 30 cadets sat in the seats, taking notes on data pads. At the front of the room stood a woman who looked nothing like a warrior. Captain Amanda Price was small and thin, with gray hair and glasses. She wore a gentle smile and spoke in a soft voice. She reminded Vrexolon of his old mathematics tutor from childhood. "Good morning, cadets," Amanda said. Today we will continue our discussion of information warfare. Who can tell me the 3 pillars of psychological operations? A cadet raised his hand. Confusion, division, and demoralization, ma'am. Correct. And what is our goal when applying these pillars? Another cadet answered. To defeat the enemy before the first shot is fired. To make them unwilling or unable to fight. Amanda nodded with approval. The greatest victory is the one that requires no blood. If we can make our enemies surrender through clever use of information, we save lives on both sides. She turned to the screen and pulled up an image of a star system Vrexolon recognized. His blood ran cold. Let's discuss a historical case study, Amanda said. The siege of Proxima Station, 12 years ago. Human forces were outnumbered 3-1. The enemy had superior firepower and defensive positions. Traditional assault would have resulted in massive casualties. Vrexolon remembered this battle. The Therian Empire had followed the reports closely. The enemy forces had been allies of their rivals. Everyone had expected the humans to be crushed. Instead, the enemy had surrendered after 6 days without a single major engagement. What happened at Proxima Station has never been fully explained, Amanda continued. But let's imagine, hypothetically, how a skilled PsyOps team might approach such a situation. She smiled her gentle smile. First, we would study the enemy culture. What do they believe? What do they fear? The defenders of Proxima Station came from a species with strong spiritual beliefs. They believed the spirits of their ancestors watched over them constantly. Amanda pulled up another image. It showed communication logs from the enemy commander. During the siege, the enemy began receiving strange messages. Voices on frequencies that should have been secure. Voices that seemed to speak in the language of their dead relatives. Voices that warned them the station was cursed. A cadet raised his hand. Were these fake transmissions, ma'am? Amanda tilted her head. That's classified. But hypothetically, if a human team had access to public records of deceased enemy citizens, and if they had voice synthesis technology, and if they understood the enemy's burial rituals well enough to reference specific details only the dead would know. She let the sentence hang in the air. At the same time, she continued, the enemy began experiencing equipment failures. Not serious ones, just small things. Lights flickering, doors opening on their own, temperature drops in certain rooms, strange shadows on security cameras. Vrexolon's tentacles curled tight against his body. He had heard rumors of these events. Everyone had assumed it was propaganda. By day 4, enemy soldiers were refusing to patrol certain areas of the station. By day 5, 24 had requested religious leave. By day 6, the enemy commander decided the station was not worth dying for. He surrendered to avoid angering the spirits any further. Amanda turned off the screen. The human casualties in this engagement were 0. The enemy casualties were also 0. Everyone went home. A cadet in the front row looked troubled. Ma'am, isn't this kind of dishonorable, using their beliefs against them? Amanda's smile did not change. Is it more honorable to kill 10,000 soldiers in a frontal assault? Is it more honorable to leave families without fathers and mothers? Is it more honorable to create the hatred and desire for revenge that fuels future wars? The cadet had no answer. Psychological operations exist to end conflicts quickly and with minimal loss of life, Amanda said. We do not fight fair. We fight smart. And when it's over, there are more people alive than there would have been otherwise. Vrexolon sat through 3 more hours of lectures. He learned about propaganda techniques. He learned about misinformation campaigns. He learned about how to spread rumors through enemy populations. He learned about creating false flag operations that made enemies fight each other instead of humans. Each lesson was delivered in Amanda's soft, gentle voice. Each lesson was more terrifying than the last. After the class ended, Amanda approached Vrexolon directly. Commander, she said, I hope today's lessons were informative. Vrexolin struggled to keep his voice steady. They were educational. Amanda's eyes sparkled behind her glasses. You know, we don't just use these techniques against enemies. We use them to help allies too. Sometimes a well-placed rumor can prevent a war before it starts. Sometimes a false story can expose corruption without violence. Information is a tool, Commander. Like any tool, it can be used for good or evil. And humans always use it for good? Amanda laughed softly. We try. We don't always succeed, but we try. That evening, Vrexolon sat in his quarters and stared at his datapad for a long time. He did not know what to write. Finally, he began his report. I have observed the Human Psychological Operations Training Program. I do not have adequate words to describe what I have witnessed. Humans do not simply fight with weapons. They fight with information. They study their enemies deeply. They learn their beliefs, their fears, their histories, their relationships, and then they use all of this knowledge to break their enemies without firing a single shot. The instructor, Captain Amanda Price, appears to be a gentle, elderly woman. She speaks softly. She smiles constantly. And she has ended more wars than most generals ever will. I now understand why the siege of Proxima Station ended so quickly. The enemy did not surrender because they were outgunned. They surrendered because they believed they were fighting ghosts. They were not wrong. The humans had turned their own dead against them. I am forced to revise my earlier assessments. Human military capability is not merely physical. It is mental. It is cultural. It is psychological. They fight wars on levels most species do not even recognize as battlefields. Recommendation: if conflict with humans becomes necessary, assume they know more about you than you know about yourself. Assume they have already begun operations against you. Assume nothing you believe is true, because they will make you question everything. End report. Vrexolon did not sleep well that night. Every shadow in his room seemed to move. Every sound seemed like a whisper. He told himself he was being foolish. He was not entirely sure he believed it. The graduation ceremony was scheduled for the final day of the training cycle. Vrexolon had been at Fort Dominion for nearly 2 standard months. He had filled dozens of reports with his observations. He had sent warning after warning to the Galactic Council. But nothing prepared him for what he witnessed on graduation day. The morning began with a final test. 200 cadets gathered in the largest training field. They wore their formal uniforms and stood in perfect rows. The sun was bright and hot. The air was still. General Patrick Cole stood on a raised platform at the front of the formation. He was an old human with white hair and deep lines on his face. His eyes were hard but not cruel. He looked at the cadets the way a father might look at his children. Today you become soldiers, Patrick said. His voice carried across the field without amplification. Today you join a tradition that stretches back thousands of years. Today you prove that you have what it takes. He paused and looked at the sky. But first, you must show me who you really are. At his signal, instructors moved through the formation. They handed each cadet a heavy pack. Vrexolin later learned these packs weighed 30 kilograms each. Then they began to march. Lisa walked beside Vrexolin as they followed the formation. She did not smile today. Her face was serious. This is the final march, she explained. 20 kilometers through rough terrain. Full gear, no brakes. That seems difficult, Vrexolin observed. It's supposed to be. The march began on paved roads, but soon moved into the desert hills. The cadets climbed over rocks and through sand. The packs on their backs made every step harder. The sun beat down without mercy. Vrexolin watched from a following vehicle. He saw cadets begin to struggle. He saw sweat pour down their faces. He saw their legs shake with exhaustion. But he did not see anyone stop. After the first hour, a cadet near the back began to fall behind. His name was Eddie Park. He was smaller than the others, and the heavy pack seemed to crush him. His face was pale. His breathing was ragged. Vrexolon expected the instructors to help him, or remove him from the formation. Instead, something strange happened. The cadets around Eddie closed ranks. Without speaking, without being ordered, they moved to support him. One cadet took part of his pack's weight. Another steadied him with a hand on his shoulder. A third began talking to him in a low, steady voice. "Come on, Eddie, one step at a time. You've got this. Think about tonight. Cold drinks, hot food, real beds. We're not leaving without you, so keep moving." Eddie kept moving. By the halfway point, more cadets were struggling. The strongest ones moved through the formation, helping wherever they were needed. Vrexolon saw a tall woman named Diana Morgan carry 2 packs for nearly a kilometer while a teammate recovered. He saw a group of 5 cadets form a chain to pull each other up a steep hill. They moved as one organism. When one fell, others caught them. When one slowed, others pushed them forward. No one was left behind. The final 3 kilometers were the worst. The terrain was rough, and the sun was at its highest. Even the strongest cadets were showing signs of exhaustion. But something had changed in the formation. The rows were no longer neat. Instead, the cadets moved in clusters, supporting each other, encouraging each other. They were no longer individuals trying to pass a test. They were a single unit, fighting for survival. When the first cadets reached the finish line, they did not celebrate. They turned around and went back. They found the slower cadets and helped them cover the final distance. The last cadet across the line, Eddie Park, was surrounded by at least 20 of his classmates, all of them cheering him forward. He crossed the line and collapsed. His classmates caught him before he hit the ground. General Patrick Cole watched this from his platform. His hard eyes seemed to soften just slightly. "That," he said quietly, "is what I wanted to see." The graduation ceremony that followed was unlike anything Vrexolon had witnessed before. The cadets stood in their rows again, but they were different now. They stood closer together. Their eyes found each other across the formation. There was something between them that had not been there before. General Cole called out names one by one. Each cadet walked to the platform, received their insignia, and returned to the formation. It was not. When Katie Webb received her insignia, Martinez shouted from the ranks, "That's my girl! Best chokehold in the class!" The formation laughed. Katie grinned and made a gesture at Martinez that Vrexolon's translator could not interpret. When Eddie Park received his insignia, the entire formation cheered. Eddie's face turned red, but he stood taller than Vrexolon had ever seen him stand. When the last name was called, something unexpected happened. The cadets broke their formation. They rushed together at the center of the field. They embraced each other. They cried. They laughed. They screamed with joy. Vrexolon watched Diana Morgan, the tall woman who could carry 2 packs, weeping in the arms of a cadet half her size. He watched tough instructors wiping tears from their eyes. He watched enemies become friends and strangers become family. Lisa stood beside him. Her own eyes were wet. "I do not understand. They spent months hurting each other, competing against each other. Some of them have scars from training injuries. Why do they celebrate together?" Lisa wiped her face. "Because they went through hell together. There's nothing like shared suffering to bring people close." But they could have avoided the suffering. They could have trained separately, more efficiently. Lisa shook her head. Then they would just be a group of soldiers. Now they're a family. A young cadet approached them. His name was Sam Carter. He had a bruise on his cheek from the morning's march, and tears on his face. "Commander Vrexolon," Sam said, "I wanted to thank you." "Thank me? For what?" "For watching, for trying to understand us." Sam smiled through his tears. I hope whoever you report to realizes something important. We don't fight because we hate our enemies. We fight because we love each other, and there's no force in the galaxy stronger than that. He shook Vrexolan's hand, a human greeting the commander had finally learned, and returned to celebrate with his classmates. That night, Vrexolan wrote his longest report yet. I have witnessed a human graduation ceremony. I finally understand what makes their military truly dangerous. It is not their weapons. It is not their tactics. It is not their psychological operations. It is their bonds. Humans deliberately create shared suffering to forge unbreakable connections between soldiers. They push their people to the point of failure, and then force them to rely on each other. The result is a military unit that functions like a family. These soldiers will not abandon each other. They will not betray each other. They will fight and die for each other with a loyalty that goes beyond duty or discipline. I watched 200 individuals become a single unit today. I watched strangers become brothers and sisters. A Therian soldier fights for the Empire. A human soldier fights for the person beside them. I am beginning to think the humans have the better motivation. End report. Vrexolan sent the message and turned off his datapad. Tomorrow he would deliver his final report in person. Commander Vrexolan stood in the communications room of Fort Dominion. The screen before him showed the faces of 12 Galactic Council members from 12 different species. They had gathered to hear his final report on human military capabilities. His tentacles trembled slightly. He had practiced his words 100 times. He still was not sure they were enough. Council members, Vrexolan began, I have spent 2 standard months observing human military training. I have filled my reports with data, observations, and analysis. But now, facing you directly, I realize that numbers and facts cannot capture what I have witnessed. He paused to steady himself. The humans are insane. The council members stirred. A Krix representative clicked its mandibles in confusion. Could you elaborate, Commander? Gladly. Vrexolan pulled up his first set of images. This is human hand-to-hand combat training. They practice killing techniques on each other. They break bones and tear muscles. They choke each other unconscious, and they do this every day. Surely they must minimize injuries, said a Therian council member. No, they celebrate injuries. A cadet who completes training without scars is considered suspicious. They believe pain makes them stronger. He switched to the next set of images. This is survival training. Cadets are dropped into wilderness with nothing but small knives. They must find food, water, and shelter on their own. Death is possible. The instructors told me this is considered the easy course. The council members exchanged glances. During my observation, a cadet was injured. Standard military logic says to abandon injured personnel during training exercises. The other cadets refused. They carried her for 2 days through mountains, rather than leave her behind. When I asked why, they looked at me like I was the strange one. Vrexolan moved to his next report. This is their psychological operations program. A gentle elderly woman teaches young soldiers how to make enemies surrender through fear and confusion. She once ended a siege by convincing the defenders they were being haunted by ghosts. No shots fired. No blood spilled. The enemies simply gave up. The council chamber was silent. But none of this is what truly frightens me, Vrexolan said. He pulled up footage from the graduation ceremony. The council watched 200 humans embrace each other and weep with joy. What frightens me is this. These soldiers love each other. Not as comrades, as family. They have suffered together, bled together, nearly died together. The bonds they have formed cannot be broken by threats or bribes or pain. He turned to face the council directly. A Therian soldier fights for duty. A Krix soldier fights for glory. A Ven soldier fights for resources. A human soldier fights for the person standing next to them. He let that sink in. I spoke with a young cadet on my last day at the training facility. His name was Chris Taylor. He had just graduated after months of brutal training. He was exhausted, injured, and happier than any being I have ever seen. Vrexolan remembered the conversation clearly. Chris had approached him near the celebration. His face was dirty and streaked with tears. He walked with a limp from the final march, but his eyes were bright. "Commander," Chris had said, "I heard you're leaving tomorrow. I wanted to say goodbye." "That is kind of you," Vrexolan had replied. Chris looked around at his fellow graduates. "You know, 6 months ago, I didn't know any of these people. Now, I would die for them. Every single one." "Why?" Vrexolan asked. "They are strangers who became training partners. Surely, that is not enough to inspire such loyalty." Chris smiled. "Have you ever been so tired you couldn't think? So hungry you couldn't see straight? So scared you wanted to quit everything?" Vrexolan nodded slowly. "These people pulled me through all of that. When I wanted to give up, they wouldn't let me. When I fell, they picked me up. When I was sure I couldn't go another step, they walked beside me until I found the strength." He looked at Vrexolan with complete sincerity. "That's not something you forget, Commander. That's not something you can buy or fake. That's real. And now, wherever they send me, I know I'll have people who will do the same thing. People who will never leave me behind." Chris extended his hand. Vrexolan took it. "I hope when your people and my people meet out there in the stars, it's as friends," Chris said. "I really do, because if it isn't, he didn't need to." Vrexolan pulled himself back to the present. The council members were waiting. "The human I spoke with expressed hope that our species would meet as friends," Vrexolan said. "His hope was genuine. His handshake was warm. He truly wants peace." He straightened his posture. "But here is my warning to this council. If any member species chooses to make enemies of humanity, they should understand what they are facing. They are not facing soldiers who fight for pay or glory or territory. They are facing soldiers who fight for love." The word seems strange in a military context. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. "Love," Vrexolan repeated. "For their comrades, for their families, for their home, for their species. Humans will do anything to protect what they love. They will endure any hardship. They will never surrender. They will never stop." He pulled up one final image. It showed the human cadets at the end of their graduation march. They were exhausted, dehydrated, pushed far beyond what any reasonable being should endure. And they were carrying their weakest member across the finish line, together. "This is humanity," Vrexolan said. "They are creative, determined, and slightly insane. They practice warfare as both science and art. They study their enemies deeply and exploit every weakness. They form bonds that cannot be broken." He looked at each council member in turn. "My final recommendation is simple. Do not give humanity a reason to be our enemy. They train for war with more dedication than any species I have encountered. They prepare for conflicts that may never come. They push their young through experiences that would break most beings. And they do it all with smiles on their faces." Vrexolan took a deep breath. "The humans are coming to the galactic stage. They will be our neighbors, our trading partners, possibly our allies. I believe they genuinely want peace." He paused. "But if peace fails, if conflict becomes unavoidable, then know this: we will be facing the most dangerous species this galaxy has ever seen. Not because they are stronger, or smarter, or more advanced, but because they have mastered something the rest of us barely understand." "What is that?" asked the Therian council member. Vrexolan thought of Chris Taylor's smile. He thought of cadets carrying their injured friend through the mountains. He thought of 200 soldiers crying in each other's arms. They have mastered the art of fighting for something worth dying for. He bowed to the council. End report. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then the head council member, an ancient Ven with silver scales, spoke. Commander Vrexolan, your report will be classified at the highest level. Your recommendations will be forwarded to all member governments. And what will those recommendations be? Vrexolan asked. The Ven looked at the frozen image of human cadets on the screen. Young, smiling, completely unaware of the fear they inspired in an alien commander. Your words exactly, the Ven said. Do not make enemies of humanity. Whatever the cost of friendship, it is cheaper than the alternative. Vrexolan nodded. It was the right decision. He hoped it would be enough. Far away, on a blue planet called Earth, Chris Taylor put on his new uniform and prepared for his first assignment. He did not know that an alien commander had just warned an entire galaxy about his species. He did not know that his smile and handshake had influenced diplomatic policy across 12 star systems. He only knew that somewhere out in the stars, adventure was waiting, and he would face it with friends at his side. It was a human way of thinking. It was the only way that mattered. Commander Vrexolan had served the Thyrian Empire for 40 standard cycles. He had fought in 3 wars, commanded a fleet of 12 battleships, and once negotiated peace with the violent Krix Collective. Nothing in his long career had prepared him for his current assignment. He stood at the edge of a dusty training field in the Nevada desert on planet Earth. The sun was bright and hot. His purple skin felt dry under its harsh light. Around him, young humans ran in circles while screaming songs about violence and glory. Their faces were red and covered in sweat. Some of them looked ready to collapse, but they kept running. This is normal, said Lisa Grant, his assigned liaison officer. She was a small human female with brown hair tied back in a tight knot. She smiled at him constantly, which Vrexolan found deeply unsettling. Among Thyrians, showing teeth was a sign of aggression. They appear to be in distress, Vrexolan observed. His translator device hung around his neck, turning his clicks and whistles into human speech. Lisa laughed. It was a strange sound, like small explosions from her throat. Oh, they're fine. This is just morning exercise. Gets the blood pumping. Vrexolan made a note on his datapad. He had been sent here by the Galactic Council to assess humanity's military capabilities. Earth had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel. They were new to the galactic community. The Council wanted to know if they were a threat. After watching the morning exercise, Vrexolan was beginning to think the answer was yes. Lisa led him toward a large building made of gray concrete. The sounds coming from inside were troubling. He heard thuds, grunts, and occasional screams. His 4 ears rotated toward the noise, trying to understand what was happening. This is our hand-to-hand combat training facility, Lisa explained. She opened the door and gestured for him to enter. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of human sweat. Vrexolan's nose wrinkled. The room was large and covered with soft mats. On these mats, humans were attacking each other with their bare hands and feet. They grabbed each other, threw each other to the ground, and wrapped their limbs around each other's necks. A large human male stood at the center of the room. His name tag read Instructor Jake Morrison. He had arms thicker than Vrexolan's tentacles and a voice like thunder. Come on, Martinez, Jake shouted at a struggling cadet. Your grandmother hits harder than that. Put some effort into it. The cadet named Martinez responded by driving his elbow into his opponent's stomach. His opponent, a female cadet named Katie Webb, absorbed the blow and then flipped Martinez onto his back. She wrapped her legs around his neck and began to squeeze. Excellent technique, Webb, Jake called out. Martinez, if you can still breathe, tap out. Martinez slapped the mat 3 times. Katie released him immediately and helped him to his feet. They touched fists and smiled at each other before returning to their fighting positions. Vrexolon felt his stomachs churn. They are trying to harm each other. They're learning to defend themselves, Lisa corrected, and each other. These two will probably be assigned to the same unit. They need to know each other's strengths and weaknesses. By attempting to strangle one another? Lisa shrugged. Best way to learn. Vrexolon watched for another hour. He saw cadets practice strikes, blocks, throws, and holds. He saw them bleed from split lips and broken noses. He saw them limp from twisted ankles and bruised ribs. And through all of it, they kept going. They helped each other up. They gave advice to their opponents. They laughed when they made mistakes. He did not understand these creatures at all. Later that day, Lisa took him to observe weapons training. Cadets stood in long rows, aiming metal tubes at targets in the distance. When they pulled the triggers, the tubes exploded with noise and fire. Small metal projectiles flew through the air and tore holes in the targets. Primitive but effective, Vrexolon muttered, making notes. The instructor here was a calm woman named Sergeant Paula Dixon. She walked behind the cadets, watching their form and offering quiet corrections. Unlike Jake Morrison, she rarely raised her voice, but the cadets seemed even more afraid of her. Breathe, Paula told a nervous cadet named Tyler Ross. The weapon is a tool. You control it. It does not control you. Tyler adjusted his grip and fired again. This time his shot hit the center of the target. Paula nodded once and moved on. How long do they train with these weapons? Vrexolon asked. Basic training is 12 weeks, Lisa said. But some cadets go on to specialized schools. Snipers might train for another year before they're certified. One of your years, learning to use a single weapon? A sniper might have to take a shot from 2 kilometers away, in bad weather, while exhausted, with lives depending on the outcome, Lisa said. Her smile faded for a moment. We take it seriously. Vrexolon added to his notes. He was beginning to realize that humans took everything seriously. They just had a strange way of showing it. That evening, Lisa brought him to a dining facility where cadets were eating their evening meal. The room was loud with conversation and laughter. Vrexolon expected to see the cadets eating alone, recovering from their brutal day. Instead, they sat in groups, sharing food and stories. He watched Katie Webb, the same cadet who had nearly choked her partner unconscious that morning, sit next to Martinez and offer him extra food from her tray. Martinez accepted it with a grin. I hurt you pretty bad today, she said. Least I can do is make sure you eat. Martinez rubbed his neck. I'll get you back tomorrow. You can try. They both laughed. Vrexolon turned to Lisa. They fight each other all day and then share meals as friends? Lisa nodded. That's the idea. Out there in the galaxy, these people will depend on each other for survival. The bonds they form here will save their lives someday. Vrexolon thought about this as he walked back to his quarters that night. On Thyria, soldiers were trained separately and brought together only for specific missions. The idea of building relationships through combat was foreign to him. He sat down to write his first official report to the Galactic Council. Day 1 observations, he began. Human military training appears designed to inflict maximum stress on recruits. They practice violence against each other daily. Injuries are common and expected. Medical treatment is provided, but cadets are encouraged to continue training despite pain. Most disturbing is the positive attitude displayed throughout. Cadets appear to enjoy the process. They form strong bonds with those who hurt them. Initial assessment: humans are not normal. Further observation required. End report. He sent the message and went to sleep. He dreamed of smiling humans chasing him through an endless desert.